Brief history of yourself. Who are you? When I was a kid, I used to always get the question asked, who do you think you are? All the time. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And I'm like, I don't know. I was always asked, like, to get you to second guess yourself. And it's funny because in the house I grew up in, I had to read the Bible a lot, and nobody else really read the Bible, just us kids, really. And I always wondered why. And then, like now, understanding things from a higher perspective, I could see how a lot of the ego has a way of teaching. Let's just put it this way, or a way of knowing and being and doing. And if you understand the ego, then you can really, really find a good way navigating life. Because if you understand the ego, then you'll almost never be surprised. Robert Greene has a book called The Laws of Human Nature. And it's basically all about this, right? How the ego works, how slicky it is, how it tries to usurp itself. Course in Miracles, all about the ego, training the mind, all that type of stuff. And so it's just interesting because the things I used to hear growing up that would make me question myself are the inverse of the things that I'm now realizing or coming to discover as the fundamental truths of existence and reality. And so it seems interesting to me that some would question or to find the inverse of these truths and present them as something to be debated or discussed. And I think that we do this a lot. When I say we, I mean us egos, right? We do this a lot. Uh, and this is coffee, by the way. It's coffee. I put it in this because it helps cool it down faster. So we do this a lot. We do this a lot. We act like we have the authority to question somebody else's authority about who they are, what they're doing, all this stuff. And when I was in the Army, I used to be big into this, really big into it, going around questioning authority, all that type of stuff. And even after or post the Army, I was always questioning authority. And that definitely led its own ways to me. It has its own path, basically, is what I'm saying. So we like to question authority, but we don't question who granted us the authority to question. We just assume that's innate. We just assume that's granted to us. It's gifted to us. It is what it is. Somebody gave you the authority to do that, so I have the authority to question you. And the ultimate end of the game, end of the story is it's already done, right? So to me, it's all one big cosmic joke. I think that's what they call it, like the astronomers call it, the cosmic giggle, right? Because it's in the end, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's already taken care of, right? But down here, in the day-to-day, in time, right, we feel the need to live out these expressions of archetypical egoic tendencies and allow them as questioning existence and all this other stuff. And it's interesting because when I was young, I was trained to question my existence and to question who I am and why I'm here. And I think not enough of us do that, right? And the training isn't always. The course says free will doesn't mean you get to choose the curriculum. It just means you get to choose when you take the courses, training. And I didn't get to choose the curriculum, but I did get to learn from it, right? So I got to learn from this growing up, right? And the real reason is because I had to question why I was here. Every time I did something, I had to question it, because if I didn't have an answer, I wouldn't be able to do it. And I noticed that, Simon Sinek wrote a book, Start With Why. I noticed that a lot of us have this tendency to need to question things or to justify things to be able to answer them. And that tendency is the opposite of our existence. It's the opposite of our nature. It's what we are not. And what is it? Ram Dass says the ego is who we think we are, right? All these things we think we're supposed to do. All of our thoughts. For some of us, all of our emotions. They're really not us. They're vehicles, right? They're tools. They're not you. And I think a lot of us get caught up in thinking that we are what we do. And so if you really identify what your job, then you may, if you make a mistake at your job, you may really, really get affected by it. I'm really caught up in what I do, so I get really affected by when I make mistakes in my job. But if you don't identify with it, then you won't necessarily be affected by it too much. If you know who you are, basically. If you stop trying to take your identity and put it on other things, or to veil it with another cloak, right? And that's basically like how I've been seeing things. Is as much as I try to, I had my name changed when I was 5 years old when I was adopted, and I thought that would change me. I thought it would make me different. It didn't. I'm the same way as I was, I'm 29 now, so 24 years ago, right? I'm the same person, right? And I wrote a tweet. I'm like, yeah, you can change your name, but you can't change who you are. You can't change how God made you. I am as God created me, right? I'm not the body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. Well, if that's true, then we have to go back. What is it? Let's go. You can't go back to the beginning, but you have to, right? Because you need to understand who you are and where you come from, why you are here, right? And like I said, not enough of us question this, and we focus on surviving. We focus on the distractions of life, and all of those things are here to distract us from understanding who we are, why we're here, and what we do. And that's what perpetuates the suffering in the world, right? And we really don't want to see this, because our ego wants us to feel like we can't do anything as an individual. But Michael Jackson and Gandhi said, if you want to change the world, you start with yourself, right? Man in the mirror, right? It's the only way. And the main reason is because this whole thing is taking place inside of your mind, right? And so if what Wayne Dyer said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? Quantum physics is now telling us that everything we look at knows we're looking at it. If you're looking at a person, on some level, they know you're looking at it. They know you're looking at them, right? So you can't change things like that. At a fundamental level, you can't change things. You can't rip truth out and make it something else. It doesn't work that way. And I think a lot of us wish it did. A lot of us want to change how things were. And on some level in the quantum, yes, you can go back and make a memory and more positive and all that type of stuff. But ultimately, if you have like a real strong pattern that had been going on for 20, 30, 40 years, it's hard to make that not so. And a lot of times the reason you went through that is because you needed to have the experience that gave you, so you could come to the realization that you're only going to come to 3 years from now. Because not everybody has gone through what you've gone through. They haven't experienced what you've experienced, right? So we all come from the same place. We all hold, quote unquote, the same identity, but we don't have the same experience, and that's what makes us different. We have different bodies, right? We have different memories, different emotional patterns, different biological experiences, and these are what separate us, right? But what separates us isn't what makes us not a collective, right? Just because a group of individuals are individuals and they're separate doesn't mean that they don't synchronize, right? It doesn't mean that they don't join lockstep with one another as they're walking, right? And so that's what we're talking about here is what is that thing, right? What is that thing? Because if you think about it on a grander scale, let's look at it on a cosmic or global level, right? The whole world is a symphony. You have a part to play. That's why you're here, right? Maybe you're the flute. I don't know. Trombone. I used to play trombone. The whole world is in the orchestra, right? God is the, what do they call it? The director, right? Or the divine Kohan is the director. Jesus is the director. Buddha is the director, right? Where's your instrument? If you don't remember how to play, you're not going to be able to join in the orchestra. And that orchestra is going to be that much more dull because your part isn't in it. And so when we look out in the world and we get upset and we feel like something's missing, we feel like it's lost its luster, it's a little bit more dull than we remember. It's because you're missing from it. Problem with science, which it's finally coming around to it, but for the longest time, science was subtracting itself from the equation. And just saying, look, this is just how it is. Not counting themselves in as part of the equation. And it's hard to do that when you think that something out here is objective and this is a book, and this is a table, and this is a wall. Science tells us that everything is mostly empty space. You learned that in grade school. So what does that mean to you? How do you go around believing and getting jobs and all that type of stuff when this shit isn't even fucking real? How do you do that, right? The way you do that is you forget who you are. You forget where you come from. You forget why you're here. They call it spiritual amnesia. And a lot of us seem to be suffering from it. However, everything here that you choose to suffer from, you can also choose to turn into an obstacle that you conquer, right? Ryan Holiday wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way. It's a good book. It teaches you not to go around it, but to use that thing as a point of leverage to move forward. And the only way you can do that is if you remember what the fuck you're here for. Because if you don't, an obstacle is just going to be a fucking road. It's going to be a wall. You're not going to be able to get around it. Because you won't have anything pushing you forward. And then you wonder why you keep giving up. So it starts with your motivation. It starts with really, when it comes down to it, there's two ways that you can choose to live. You can choose to serve yourself. You can choose to serve others. If you choose to serve yourself, you got to get really good at serving yourself. Because otherwise you're going to have a very difficult life. Very difficult life. It's much easier to serve others than it is to serve yourself. It's about 40 orders of magnitude easier to serve others than it is to serve yourself. Not saying it's impossible to serve yourself. You can certainly do it. I don't recommend it because I'm not on that path. That's why I'm making these videos. But if you want to, it's definitely certainly open to you. It's all paths are, they all eventually lead to God, right? Some of them take longer than others, but who are we to judge? I'm certainly nobody to judge. But when it comes down to it, there's two ways to live in this life. You serve yourself or you serve others. Um, and that's really how you remember who you are, because it's going to be your true nature that teaches you how to serve, whether that's yourself or others. It's your choice.